Hi guys, today I have comedian and fellow believer Byron Trimble on the show with me today, and we'll get to that right after this. Can you believe the year is already half over? Well, it's time for me to review my goals. Have you reviewed yours? Wait, you don't have any goals? You know what? It's never too late. The Goal Process 101 ebook has helped me clarify the best and most achievable goals. Plus, it helped me set a plan in place to accomplish them. I mean, this podcast is just one of the results of the Goal Process 101 ebook. Check it out at christiannerdsunite.com/goals. It's never too late to start. And now, back to the show. Today, we are talking humor and faith and some medical issues I have in common with a very good friend of mine, comedian Byron Trimble. You may have seen him on the Dry Bar series or heard one of his songs on the Dan Patrick Show. He also has a special called Byron Trimble, Are You Okay? On Amazon Prime Video, and is about to head out on his No Brainer tour. But before we get to my interview with Byron, I have some scripture for us. Proverbs 17:22. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Ecclesiastes 3:4. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Now, this next scripture needs a little setup, and I'm going to read it in a little more dramatic presentation than I usually do. Now, in this verse, Jesus has just healed a blind man, and the religious leaders confront the man about it. John 9:24 through 41. So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I've already told you, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become one of his disciples?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." And the man answered, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Now, personally, I think this is kind of a funny story. It sure sounds a little like social media today. Someone aggressively accuses you of something, so, we give a really accurate account, if not somewhat snarky, and then they kick us out of the Facebook group because we told them the truth and not what they wanted to hear. So I think that's funny. You may not think that's funny, but I think it is. Well, I think it's time that we get on with the interview. So here is my interview with my good friend, comedian Byron Trimble. And we're back, and I have with me my guest, Mr. Byron Trimble,
Ricky.
comedian. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, guest and friend. And
Guest
friend. It's
and
very
friend.
important to add the friend. We go way
True.
back, me and Ricky.
We have known each other for many years, and you have gone on to bigger and better things
Yeah,
since
if that's
I
what you
have
want
seen
to
you.
call it. Sure. I've gone on to other things. I've gone on to
Other
other
things.
things. I don't know, bigger and greater, whatever. But we're still friends, and it's great to be on your podcast.
Yeah, welcome to the Christian Nerds Unite podcast. I am so glad to have you on the show today, and just wanted to talk to you for a little while and find out, kind of what it's like to be a. Do you consider yourself a Christian comedian, or are you a comedian that happens to be a Christian? What does that look like for you?
Isn't that always the little that's the fence you got to jump in, one or the other. Uh I would say I'm a clean comedian with a Christian focus. That's what I
Okay.
would say. Working clean gets you a lot of work outside of churches, and
Hmm.
corporate events and stuff that pay better and are a little bit they work
Corporate
with your
events pay you
schedule.
better than churches?
Yeah, this is, we're breaking a lot of new stuff today on this podcast, and I'm just telling you some things y'all might not know, and that's why I'm here. Uh, and then comedy clubs are fun too, even though those pay less than churches actually. But I like them because they keep you sharp. And churches, people are like spiritually obligated to laugh at you, and a lot of times at corporate events, nobody really wants to be there. And so comedy clubs are like the comedy aficionados are there. These are fans of comedy that have seen the best, the bad, and the average, and they'll let you know where you fall on that line. And so for me, it keeps me like sharp, and I enjoy that part.
Very cool. So, how did you get started in comedy?
I joke that I've been a comedian my whole life. I just didn't realize it until I was 27. And so I'm 33 now. And so I've been in the game for about 5 years now. And I worked at a church. My dad was a pastor, and I went to a Christian school. And I grew up all and so like I know church world. And then I became a pastor. And that's actually where you and I met, was in
Mhm.
Oklahoma. I worked at a church you used to go to, I believe, actually.
Yeah,
And
I
you're
actually grew up at that in that church.
Yes. So when you were a young pup, I was not there when you were a young pup,
No,
um,
that
but
building wasn't there when I
the,
was a young pup. It was a,
the,
it was the
the
same. It's the same church, but a whole different campus.
that, that's right. That's right. You were one of the children of Israel that refuted the Baal, and Moses liked you. You were
There
Moses.
you go. Actually,
Uh,
the pastor that probably hired you, Casey,
yeah.
um, he was in the youth group when I graduated high school.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Casey, he's a good guy. He's still there. A lot of my friends are still there. But I
Yeah.
was there, and churches, anyone that's affiliated with churches at all, they know that they have a lot of events. They want
Yes.
all these events to be fun, but a lot of time churches don't know how to have fun. And so that is kind of the little niche I found, and just things I've always done my whole life, silly songs, little jokes, little different ways I see the world. And then people that had a problem of, hey, we want these people who are all here to have a good time. We'll give them Jesus at the end, but we want the first 15 minutes to be fun. Can you go and do things? And so then I would just go up and I would do goofy things. We'd play games, and from that was born a comedy career where other people would call me and ask me to come, and then I ended up doing church camps, and next thing you know, it just kind of took over my schedule enough to where we took the plunge and went full time just in time for COVID to shut it all down. And so
How was that?
yeah, it's all a cruel joke. I know. Yeah. So we're in the everyone's testimony when they come at it from like the mountaintop looking back. We're still on the climb somewhere. I'm sure the happy ending will get there at some point in time, but right now we're living on faith. But it's good. It's starting to open up a little bit, and I think everybody's excited for that to happen.
Very cool. Well, if uh, if somebody out there is interested in comedy and they want to and they're interested in that idea of that, where's that Christian balance? What do you do when you're trying to, you want to have fun in front of a church organization, you've got a church event and you're trying to come up with good comedy for this church event. What kind of things do you focus on when you do that?
Well, you know what? I think you and our other good friend, Pastor Stephen Earp, and I would all agree on this fundamental thing. And Casey, we'll throw him in there as well because we all work in this space. We know this space, and we also kind of just recognize you can get away with a lot if something is well done. I believe that.
Yes.
If something is average or crap, people are just going to be like, whatever. But like, you can push some boundaries if you're good at what you do or if it's tastefully done and whatever. And so my theory is everyone likes to laugh. Um, Church people, pagan people, young people, old people, Asian people, black people, Indian people, white people, everybody likes to laugh. And so if you can cover things, talk about things, even if it's a little bit on the edge further than people like to go, if you do it from if it's just funny and it's well done and it's funny, and your heart's in a good place, that kind of matters a lot in the church world too. They want to at least know that you're coming from this from a fresh place or from a pure place. You can
Mm-hmm.
get away with a lot. So like I've gone into churches with velvety pink pews with hymn books right there in the front, and everybody in there is wearing suits. And they probably argue if someone brought a drummer in there. But I come in there and I'm singing Marvin Gaye and I'm singing Bruno Mars, and they are all laughing and having a good time. And so it's kind of one of those funny things. But you can get a comedy's part of it too, just laughter and people having a good time. But you can get away with a lot. If it's fun. And so that's one of the reasons I enjoy comedy. And so I would say that's kind of when you're doing the two things. I like to write from the standpoint of my my stuff is not so insider that only church people are going to get it. And
Mm.
so if something is super insider, I won't make that part of like my main routine. Maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
throw it in there if I'm at a church show. But at the core, I try to keep asking myself, how universal is this? Is this something that everybody can laugh at and enjoy? And so, and even if you're not a church person, you can, like, I have a joke that says, um, everyone, any pastor's kids, I'll always ask the crowd, say, any pastor's kids in the house tonight? And it usually gets one or two people saying, yay, whatever. And I'll say, oh man, great. It's great to meet the others. That unfortunately gets a much bigger response at the prison shows. And so that's something that church people will understand more because everyone knows that pastor's kids that went off the rails. And
Yes.
non-church people will even kind of they'll be like, yeah, you know what? It does seem like all the pastor's kids I ever meet are just bat crazy. And so it's kind of things like that. You find things that work for everybody. That was a long answer, but
No,
podcast is
that's
a long
fine.
format. So there,
It
it's
it is. It is. That's perfectly fine. So, you mentioned something just a minute ago. You will sing Marvin Gaye or Bruno Mars. Music is part of your comedy.
yeah.
Talk to me about how did that become a thing for you? That music was going to be part of your act.
Ricky, it's funny because music was the first thing. Music, I would come up with stand-up bits just to get to the next song. It was almost like it was almost like it was almost like Mark Lowry and the Gaithers. Like they all got their whole homecoming set list of hymns, and then they'll throw Mark Lowry out there just for a transition. For those of you who are fans of Southern gospel, if you're not, then just forget everything I just said. And so it's almost kind of like that. And so I started just building that stand up muscle as a means of getting to the next thing, the next
Mm-hmm.
song. And then as I got more into stand up, I kind of shied away from it for a while because a lot of the old timers I talked to and like the hardcore dudes that work the streets of New
Mm-hmm.
York and LA and have been in the business forever, they'll call music hacky. they'll say if you're cheating. If you need music or a guitar or a prop to be funny, then you're not that funny. Real comics stand up and just tell jokes, set up,
Hmm.
boom, punchline, set up, boom, punchline, and that's how you work a crowd. And then I followed that for a little while, which was good from one perspective because it developed my stand up chops, um, and got me better at that. But then on the other standpoint, I eventually realized that that was not the greatest of advice because that may have been true when they were starting off, but this is now a day and age where people have 10-second attention spans,
Hmm.
and it's all about clickability, and it's all about Instagram reels that are 15 seconds, and it's all about all these things where you got to be quick and keep their attention. And so then I was like, that's actually not very good advice because the music and stand up is what kind of makes me unique and interesting. And so then I kind of embraced both of them. And so music's a huge part of it, stand up's a big part of it. And then I started to do a lot more crowd work too, which is always super fun because that's like a unique thing to that show, and audiences always love that.
Very cool. Well, so you've had some pretty big platforms that you've been on.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
one of them was the Dry Bar, which I'm familiar with. How did that all come about?
Dry bar is back when I did it. It was a little more exclusive. Now it seems like most of my peers now have had one, and so it's kind of one of those things that it was like you were one of the few on the mountainside screaming, "I have a dry bar," and then it became really crowded on the mountain. But I did one about 2 years ago, and dry bars out of Provo, Utah, which is really pretty place, and it's a for Vid Angel, and they do a lot of really great work. And I just knew a guy who did it, my buddy Lee Harden, and a few other guys, Jeff Allen, and some of these different guys. Maybe I'm not like close friends with them, but we're familiar because we all kind of work in the same Christian world. And reached out, and they were looking for someone. And it's kind of funny. Here's the funny story about that is it's kind of a God thing because this is a Christian, a largely Christian audience.
Yeah.
The day we decided mutually with my church that we were going to tackle this, and we had been praying as a staff, and Casey, our pastor, and me and
Hmm.
my family, and all these people, we were praying about like going and taking the plunge, taking the leap, and like going full time into this. And that's always scary, when you have a full time
Yeah.
job that gives you a paycheck consistently on this day every month, every week. And so we were praying about doing that. And the day we decided that we were going to take the leap, I leave work that day, and I'm kind of like freaking out. I'm like, what is it? What have I just done? What just happened? And that night is the night I got the email from Dry Bar. So it was one of those kind of things where just like it was instantly, it doesn't always happen that way, but like instant affirmation from God of just saying like, hey, look, I'm with you. This is going to work out. And then, and then a lot of good things happen. Then COVID happened, and then it's just that's life, right? That's life. You're not following God only for the home runs and the big things. You're following God for the relationship and the experience. And sometimes there's lows where you gotta trust and trust and trust some more. So, Dry
Absolutely.
Bar though has been definitely a top three thing for me in my career, that people enjoy and keep going back to.
Very cool. So, um, you you had a bit that you did for a while. I think this was actually a bit you did at the Dry Bar. Now you're from Michigan, is that correct?
Yes.
Originally,
Yep.
and then you lived in Oklahoma for a while,
I did.
and that's where I'm from, and I've got listeners all over the country and some all over the world. But tornadoes were a thing in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and you did a bit about Oklahoma people and tornadoes.
Yeah.
Do you actually know that bit well enough to do it for us real quick?
I can give you the abbreviated version, sure.
Sure.
Let's see. It's been a while since I've done that one. It's been a while since I've done any jokes. So here we go. What does do? But yeah, basically, I just talk about how, look, in Michigan, we value having an emergency plan. Okay, even if that plan is to run, if the popo walked in right now, I have a plan. I'm running. So like this is what we just like to have, an emergency plan. And one of the things I was just floored at in Oklahoma, because that's the first thing you remember when you're moving to Oklahoma is that there's these death-sucking funnels that come out of the sky that can just kill you any second. And so it's worrisome for somebody like me. And I wanted to know what the plan was. And I was just so baffled by seemingly the lack of anybody's plan. And I find this guy in my neighborhood and I say, yo, bro, if a tornado comes, what do we do? And he looked at me, serious as can be, and he says, well, you go outside and you watch. And I thought he was joking. Like, I stared at him for 5 solid seconds. I'm like, and what? And he was dead serious. And sure enough, the first tornado comes. I'll never forget it. We were at church. I see the sky, and I start running inside, pelting rain. It's like freaking Twister out there. And I'm running inside, and outside the corner of my eye, I see that dude in his front yard staring at the sky like this. And I said, yo, bro, what are you doing? You're about to die. He said, maybe. And just kept on looking. And I keep going. I go inside. I got my babies in the bathtub duct taped to a mattress. And this guy's standing out in his front yard like he's reading a putt. Like I think it's going to break left. And so, so anyways, the joke ends with tying it back together with what I know, because I thought all you Oklahoma people were fearless, like fearless. And then one day it snowed. And my gosh, I see fear in the eyes of people. When Jesus comes back, he better hope he don't come to Oklahoma on a snow day, because he ain't going to find nobody. The same people who will take a selfie with a tornado are the same people that if a cup of ice spills in the parking lot, y'all cancel school. It's unbelievable. And so, anyways, that's the gist of it. I'm a little rusty, but that's the idea of it.
I appreciate it.
What's funny is I had to. I always that joke is so real. Every church
it is
in
real.
Oklahoma or Texas, I would have to ask if anyone has died at the church from a tornado, and I won't tell that joke. And so every once in a while, a church would be like, yeah, actually, a tornado crushed our church like 3 years ago. Maybe don't make fun of tornadoes and stuff. And then I stay clear. And I'm like, you know what? That is just a crazy problem to have.
it is a bit insane. I have to admit. I've lived here since I was 12 years old, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
So how did COVID affect your career path?
Ricky, this is where, do you have a violin with you in the studio? I feel like this is where the violin is gonna start going, because COVID has very, very much ruined many things. We were doing pretty good. Anyone that's ever started a business or gone out on your own in any sort of capacity knows that, like, you're like a baby deer those first few years or so, where, the smallest thing, like, you're very fragile. And we were doing good, and like the calendar was full, and I'm looking at the whole thing, and I'm going, well, by golly, I think we're doing it. And I'll never forget, March 12th was when the crap hit the fan. 2020 in the U.S. started with that player for the Utah Jazz. Playing
right
the
here in Oklahoma City.
Thunder, actually.
Yeah.
It started with that, and the NBA shut down, and within 24 hours, the world was shut down. And for the next 3 days, my phone rang off the hook with people at that time wishfully thinking we're just postponing, because we thought it was going to be maybe 3 weeks or something.
Right.
But then cancellation after cancellation, and then all of a sudden the entire calendar went up in smoke. And so some things have come back. but it's still mostly a lot of people are just waiting and seeing. A lot of churches took a hit financially last year, and so
Hmm.
probably paying for entertainment to come in is last on their are very low on their priority list in their staff meetings right now.
Yeah, there are some
And
statistics that say, I think up to 20 or 30% of churches are expected to not ever reopen. That
not ever
basically,
reopen.
and not because of the fear of the disease, but because they couldn't survive the
Yeah,
period of time where they were closed.
it killed them. And
Yeah,
people and a lot of their people went to other churches or
yeah.
so my story is not all that together unique. Unfortunately, COVID has messed up a lot of people's livelihoods, and so yeah, it affected it a lot, and we're still kind of hoping things will get back going here pretty soon. In the meantime, I've got a lot of new jokes and a lot of observations in life, as well as some various medical stuff that has happened that was unplanned this last year. That has kind of put our family through the ringer.
Well,
But
why
God is
why don't
good,
we
and we're still
actually
going.
why don't we actually go there real quick? My
Whew.
audience is actually pretty familiar with discussing medical conditions because I've been very open here on the show. I've been very open about discussing my wife's condition with her total artificial heart
Yeah,
that she's had for almost 2.5 years now, and I actually found out today that you had brain surgery
yeah.
and that you and I actually have the same disease. Is it really a disease? I don't. It's a
Whatever it's
congenital
called.
condition. Uh,
Yes.
it's called curare malformation, and
Yeah.
it's a malformation of the skeletal the skull bones, right?
Yeah.
And it's to do with the back of your head and putting pressure on your brain and your brain stem. And so I found out today you have that as well.
Yeah.
And tell us about your experience. How did they even figure out you had this thing?
Well, right before I went off the road, I had hurt myself trying to save money checking bags at the airport. So I was on tour in February and I was pulling these heavy bags that were like 40 pounds trying to save money. And I, hurt my shoulder and I knew I hurt it pretty bad. And so I'm like, geez, what did I do to this thing? And I start, all the preliminary things you got to do when you're trying to get
Right.
help on your shoulder with insurance. And they want you to go see a physical therapist first before they do any MRIs and yada, yada, yada.
Mm,
So we're doing all that. COVID shuts everything down. So not only did COVID screw up like my work life, but it also like everything froze for non-essential surgeries and whatever else. And so I
right.
sat at home for 5, 6 months with what turned out to be 3 rotator cuffs torn on my
Oh,
shoulder. And I sat at home for 5, 6 months, living my life, picking up my kids, all these various things. And it just got worse and worse and worse. By the time COVID was over, I go in and they look at my arm and they go, geez, oh man, your shoulder is shredded. This was their words. And they're like, man, like your joints rubbed down, your bones rubbed down, all 4 tendons are torn. And like, what in the world did you do? And B, why are you not writhing on the floor in pain? And I'm like, well, trust me, it hurts. And but yeah, they're like, you should be screaming on the floor, like crying. And so my one doctor, to his credit, at U of M, go blue, University of Michigan, he pegged it. Like he was the guy I was just wanting to have surgery. So this is all last year. It was the wildest year of my life. I'm wanting to just get like shoulder replacement. I'm like, listen, bro, I ain't gonna go climb Everest. I am not like playing professional football here. I just want to shoot basketball with my son one day. Like, just get this thing back to like 75% and we'll be good. And he's just like, man, I don't know, A, what I can do for you. And B, I think we got another problem here. And I think we got some like neurological stuff. And I
mm,
just had happened that day to burn my hand because I would burn myself because part of my things was a lack of sensitivity. So I couldn't feel. I had neurological stuff.
yeah.
So I would burn myself all the time And like by the time I felt heat, I'd already had a blister on my hand, and it's been like that for a while. And so I had my hand on the stove my wife was cooking on, and then all of a sudden, like the day before this appointment, I'm like, ah, crap. And then I look down and my hand's all white and puffy. And so I show the doctor, I'm like, actually, you know what? It's funny you mention all this because look. And he goes, oh, yeah, you definitely got a problem. And so we go and get the thing, and they found this big thing, a herniation on the base of my brain and spine that was just killing my, basically crushing my spine. And I shouldn't have been as active and as like, what's the word? Capable, functioning. That's the word. Functioning.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been as functioning as I was, and they probably projected it would have led to some sort of paralysis in my 40s. And so so we just went and tackled it. Now this was supposed to have been on January 11th was supposed to be the surgery, but in November I got COVID really bad for 2 weeks, which then caused some heart problems, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going into AFib while on the operation table. And so then they postpone it, and then they postpone it again because I was having all these heart problems. And then I just had the surgery on March 22nd. So
Wow.
I'm about 8 weeks now into my recovery. I'm doing pretty good. I have all these old people problems I never thought I would have in my 30s. I compare beta blockers with the old guys at church. And me and my father-in-law take Eliquis at the same time every night. It's super bonding. And here we are at this point in my life doing all these goofy things. But it seems like it worked, and yeah, here I am having brain surgery this year.
It's fascinating. Curare is a strange condition in that it's a malformation of the bones in your skull, and you know how this all works. And I kind of had a similar situation to you in that didn't even know I had a problem.
Yeah. All right, you got to tell me how you found out about yours.
Yeah, so I used to have what I called spells. These little spells where if I did something jarring, I would, like, if I fell over and like I, jerked my head up and down, something like that, or I jumped off the stage and landed on my feet, jarred myself. Like if I did anything kind of extreme, I would get real red in the face all of a sudden. My head would feel really thick. My chest would get tight, but not like heart weirdness, but my chest would be weird. And then my whole face would turn red. My ears would turn red. And then that would all go away. And then I would start belching. And I would get all throughout this whole thing, I would get sick to my stomach. So all this weird things happen. And my doctor, my primary care physician, was like, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm going to send you for a bunch of tests. So he sends me for a bunch of tests, and I finally get an MRI. And before the doctor had actually had a chance to review the MRI, he does a Columbo on me. You know what I mean by a Columbo?
No.
You remember the old TV? You never saw. You're not old enough to know the old TV show Columbo. But Columbo was a detective, and he would be about to walk out of the room, and he would go, one more question. So he does a Columbo on me. He goes, hey, one more question. When you lift something really heavy, do you feel like the top of your head's about to pop off? And I said, well, yeah, of course. And his face drops, and the next words out of my mouth are, obviously, that's not normal.
I thought it was until this very moment.
Until this very moment, my entire life is now a lie. I mean, I was a worship pastor. I helped move pianos.
Absolutely.
Every time I lifted anything that made me strain at all, I got lightheaded and felt like I had a headache and be like, woo, head rush. And everybody looked at me kind of funny when I did it.
Yeah.
Because they all thought I was a wimp.
Yeah.
But it turns out I actually have this this malformation,
Chiari
Curare,
malformation.
and but it turns out mine is so. Mine is, he said if mine was 1 millimeter smaller, he wouldn't actually be able to diagnose me.
Okay.
So basically, they just told me, don't ever do anything about it. Just don't play contact sports.
Okay. Okay.
But
Yeah.
but for some people, like you were functional, but you had some neurological issues with it.
Yeah.
Some people that have that condition quite literally have they have day-to-day functionality issues.
Yeah.
And
That's what
it's
was so
crazy.
crazy. And he told me, my doctor, who's the top dude at U of M, whose name was Byron, coincidentally. He told me, which it's very rare to find Byrons out there, especially white
Yep.
ones. And so he told me, he said, you have the most severe case of Chiari I've ever seen in 30 years. And I'm like, that's really weird because I'm so functioning. And he's like, that's really what's so bizarre about this. And that's really what has me so scared, is because like this could just all take a turn one day. You crack your neck funny one day or something,
Yep.
and you take a really, really bad dive really, really fast.
Yes.
And so so it's great. When I come to, I come to out of my surgery, and the first thing I hear is my doctor going, that was unbelievable. That was crazy, which is not what you want to hear when you first come out of. But my head is 15 millimeters thick. The average human skull is 8 millimeters thick. So my head is almost double the size, almost twice as thick. So every one of my teachers and aunts and uncles were correct. And so
when people said you were a thickhead, they were accurate.
Yeah. So we had to go get this bigger tool to like saw my head open and stuff. And he was just crazy. He was going nuts. And so anyways, it's all been, you can kind of see, I don't know if people can see my scar back there, but
oh yeah,
it's something else. But I'm thankful yours is pretty small, because the more I find out about this, the more I'm like, well, A, it could be a lot worse. And B, what's bad about it, Ricky, is it's mostly common in women.
yes.
So it's not even like, and it's got a women-y name, Chiari. Like, it's not even tough sounding. Like, that's why I stop at brain surgery.
I tell people it's Chiari, and they're like, isn't that poison? Curare. That's different. That's different.
I know. My wife will start explaining to people. They'll be like, he just had brain surgery. And everyone goes, oh, really? Wow. And she goes, yeah, it's called Chiari malformation. It's really common in women. I'm like, babe, just stop. You had it at brain surgery. You don't need to keep going with this. You've lost it.
So is this going to be your new bit?
That's what that will definitely be a bit, because everybody wants to know. It's kind of like a missions trip. Everybody wants to know like a 10-second summary. Once you get past 10 seconds, it's like, we don't care. And so yeah, it's like, I had brain surgery. It's called Chiari malformation. It's really common amongst women. I don't know what's going on. And so so we've had a doozy of a year, but we're still kicking, and surgery went well. So that's so crazy though that no one knows what Chiari is. So it's so crazy that you have that.
Yeah, it's super super rare, and it's funny that it's
dizziness
that you
and stuff. Did you get dizzy and all that?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, only when I had my little spells.
Yeah,
That's
what's so wild about it too. So now I'm awake. All this time in my life, I just thought I was really, really tough. It turns out I was cheating. I had this neurological thing that cut off pain. And so now I'm like awakened to all these things. I touch things that are kind of hot, and I'm like, and I feel my shoulder a lot more. That's a downside, is I feel all the pain my doctor was telling me I should have been feeling. I feel it now. And so now I've just turned into a wimp that now, it's like Superman and with his Krypton around, but we'll be all right.
Well, we'll definitely be praying for you, and tell people, where can they find Byron Trimble, and if they ever wanted to book you for an event, what would they do?
I'm all over the interwebs on YouTube. We post a lot of videos. The last 5 months have been a little bit inconsistent. Give me some grace, y'all. I had brain surgery with a problem that's common amongst women. But I have videos on there. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, just my name, at Byron Trimble. And we are actually putting together a fall tour right now that we're trying to throw mostly like free for churches because everyone had a rough year.
Yeah.
Basically, just get me there, put me up somewhere, and take up a love offering, and we'll try to just bring a fun event to your church at without breaking your bank. And that tour is coming this fall, and we're calling it the No Brainer Tour. And so, just bring me in. It's a no brainer. We're gonna have a good time. We're all gonna laugh. It's all new material with kind of a new poignant message at the end. Because when you go through crap like this, your perspective changes a little bit.
Yes.
And
Yes, it
so,
does.
we're excited about it. So you can go to my website, byrontrimble.com. You can click book now, and it'll get you connected with my team, and we'll figure out a date for you that works on the schedule this fall.
Awesome. Well, Byron, it was great talking to you, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Okay, I want to come back on sometime and not talk about all my problems and talk about some nerdy stuff. Okay, so y'all get into like all the shows and like we do Marvel stuff on here, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and the Star Wars when Mandalorian comes back, or something like that.
That would be great. It would be great to have you on a show like that.
Yeah,
That would be fun. I had so much fun doing that interview. If you want to hear more of Byron's comedy or his parody songs or find out how you can have him at your church or event, go to byrontrimble.com, and I'll also have that down in the show notes. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, follow, click, do all the things, click all the things. And, it's down there below. Just do all that stuff. And you can also find all of our social links, our online store, and links to our YouTube channel at ChristianNerdsUnite.com. And while you're there, click on the support tab and check out our Patreon. Before we go, I do want to leave you with this scripture. Ephesians 3:20-21. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. We'll see you next week.